So if you want to feel that sense of motivation and you want to feel that sense of empowerment and excitement towards what you're doing, then once you have your vision, take the time to write down what are the reasons that this is essential.
Welcome to Lessons in Leverage, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of success. We'll help you unlock the secrets of leverage so you can amplify your impact in the world. Here is your host, Spencer Lowe.
Welcome back to another episode of Lessons in Leverage. And for those joining us from YouTube, I apologize for looking like I have leprosy. I have an autoimmune condition that flares up only once every almost decade, it seems. And so that's why I look pretty crazy right now. But thanks for being with us. Today, we're going to talk about a very high leverage skill. It's a pattern I see. It's got to be the most common reason that I see people unhappy when I'm coaching them, whether that's executives at my portfolio companies or some of my employees within those companies. I see this time and time again. And so I wanted to be able to share it with our audience and call out this pattern that is probably holding you back from getting what you want. And I call it shooting at invisible targets. So imagine for a second that you wanted to play a game of golf and you go out, you get to the tee box and there's a place to tee off, but you look around and there's no fairway in any direction. There's no flag, but you know there's a hole somewhere you're trying to hit it into. There is no way to know where that hole is. It could be 100 yards out. It could be 380 yards out. You have no idea. And so what are you going to do? You're probably going to feel frustrated. You're probably not going to know where to hit the ball. And if you do hit the ball and then you start walking, how are you ever going to find a few inch wide hole in the vast amount of space around you where it could be? This is essentially what we do in life, is we get up to the tee box and we don't have any idea of what our outcome or our goal truly is. We have these vague ideas. Some of the examples is like in your personal life, you might say, well, I want to be a good parent or a good spouse. At work, it might be like, I want to see strong career progression, or I want to get ahead. These are not useful goals. They're a starting point. They're a conversation starter to really define a goal, but that's not a goal. You don't have a clear outcome that you're really working towards. And the reason that's a problem is because if you don't know where you're going, then all that happens is you feel pressure, you feel weight, you feel constrained, you feel stuck, and you don't know how to get out. And so just yesterday, I was coaching a CEO at one of my portfolio companies, and this was where he was at. And he said, well, how do I do it? How do I make this change? And what I did was started asking him questions to help him work through what is it that he's really looking for? What is the outcome that he's actually trying to drive to? Because if I didn't get him to identify that and make it clear, put a flag in the ground, create a fairway that is in the direction towards the hole, then there was no chance he was going to be able to start hitting the ball and getting down the course and into the hole where he wanted to be. And so you have to pause and say, all right, if I feel unhappy and I feel stuck, I feel like things aren't going the way I want in my personal life or in my career, you can't let that become this overwhelming, crushing emotion that stays vague, stays ambiguous. Because one of my favorite quotes is, the universe punishes the vague wish and it rewards the specific ask. So if you're in that position and you're feeling stuck and you're feeling unhappy, here's some steps you can take to try to actually bring clarity and empower yourself to start taking action and get to where you want to be. The first thing is start with just a vision. Start writing, get yourself into a place, a state, a feeling of excitement, of anticipation, of knowing something good is going to happen, and really get yourself in a position where you're not feeling negative and doubtful and fearful. And so there's different ways you can do that, but you probably already know what those are. Maybe you have a certain place you want to go to write. Maybe it's a certain time of day that you feel your best. But make sure that you get yourself feeling excited about the future and ready to actually do this work. And then sit down and write out, in an ideal world, what does it look like? Okay, so if it's for me, I did this exercise on being a father because for a while I had this story that I would repeat to myself that was, I'm just not that good of a father. I'm great in business and I'm a solid husband, but I'm just not that good of a father. I just don't know how to be a good father. I would just say that over and over again. And I'd feel kind of like a failure as a father, no matter what I did or didn't do. And so I decided, okay, enough is enough. I'm not going to keep saying this crap. I'm going to be a great father. And so I'm going to define, well, what is a great father? Is that just some vague idea that I have about fatherhood that maybe came from my childhood, maybe came from media, maybe came from religion, maybe came from friends? Maybe I'm comparing myself to someone I know that is just a really exceptional father. Where am I going to come up with this? And so I've got to go deep inside myself and say, if I feel like I'm not a good father, well, I need to know what that actually means to be a good father. So I wrote out this vision for what does it mean to be an ideal father? If I had no stress, no constraints, no money limitations, time limitations, if everything was exactly the way I needed it to be, to look at myself and say, I'm a great father, what would I be doing? What would that look like? And I wrote out this vision for what it meant to me to be a great father. So that's the start of having a target. I've now made a target. I've taken away this invisible target and said, all right, I have something I'm shooting for. But because it's an ideal, I can't just stop there and say, okay, well, I can either meet the ideal or not meet the ideal. Well, an ideal takes time. It takes becoming a better person. It takes making time to do the things. You know, the book Atomic Habits speaks to this, that your identity is really defined by that which you do consistently. And so you can't just leave it as this vague idea, even though you've written it down, you've got clear on the ideal state. Now we've got to make a plan to actually incorporate the habits and behaviors that we need to become the person that we see in that ideal state. So for me, that meant making time for my kids where they felt like they were my sole focus, where when I was with them, they didn't have to wonder, was I distracted by my phone? Was I thinking about something else? Was I wishing I was at work? I wanted them to feel like they had my whole focus and they knew how much I loved them and they felt prioritized. And that was an important part of being a great father. And so if that was part of my ideal, then what were the things I would need to do on a monthly basis, on an annual basis, on a weekly basis? What were some building blocks to become the kind of person that then would be creating that feeling in my kids? And so I wrote down, and I got it all the way down into what sort of weekly and daily type things I needed to make time for, the actions I needed to do in order to become that type of person, which would allow me to realize my ultimate vision. And so I wrote down what those things were, and it involved, I was going to get more involved in taking my kids to school. I was going to get more involved in some of their sports. I was going to have some dedicated time one-on-one with each child each week. I was going to do a once-a-month date with each of them. And that might sound like a lot, but all in total, once I had put it all out, it really was only a shift of a few hours a week that I needed to give this undivided attention to my kids. And if I did that, I was going to feel like a successful father. And so now that I know that that's all it takes, the last step is I'm going to go put that into my calendar. I'm actually going to block the time and I'm going to prioritize that will happen, because a few hours a week to feel like a success as a father, to build a really strong relationship with my kids, to get all of the love that I want out of that relationship and put into that relationship, because I can't control the love they give me. I can only control the love I give them. And then that can produce the love that I'm hoping to receive. And so I was able to put this plan together, set aside the time, and make a change that only took a few hours a week to really show up for my kids. And by doing that, I now no longer had this story of like, oh, I don't know if I'm really that good of a father. It's like, no, I've taken the time to think about, what does it mean to me to be a good father? What do I need to do to become that person? And then I'm going to commit to those actions and do it. Now, a big step here is, if you're going to accomplish anything and you're going to make time for it and you're going to really prioritize it, you need to have strong reasons why this is a must for you, why it's non-negotiable, why this is critical and worth allocating the time to. And so once you have your vision, a very important step is to write down, what are all the reasons why this is so important? Why is this vision, this ideal that you created, essential to your life? What's it going to mean? What's it going to mean for the people involved, for yourself, for others? And as you really define that and come up with strong reasons, it will shift from feeling like a task or a to-do or something you have to go get done, another thing on the list, to something you're excited about, because you see how it feels motivating. It feels like it's pulling you in and having you and contributing to you becoming the person you want to be. So those are two very different emotions around the same set of activities. So if you want to feel that sense of motivation and you want to feel that sense of empowerment and excitement towards what you're doing, then once you have your vision, take the time to write down what are the reasons that this is essential. What are the most motivating and powerful reasons for you to become this person? And then write out all the steps of what needs to be done. Make time for it on your calendar. So if you have to simplify this process down, here's what's going to happen. You notice that in some area of your life, you feel stuck or you feel unhappy. And when you ask yourself, well, how am I failing? Where am I falling short? What would I need to do if I had no constraints? What would I need to do in order to actually feel like I was succeeding here? If you don't immediately know a very clearly defined answer, then you know that your problem is you're shooting at an invisible target. You're playing golf on a hole that's not marked. You're hitting a ball into the abyss and you're hoping sometime it ends up in the hole. That's craziness. And it's an overwhelming feeling of being stuck and being frustrated. So when you notice that that's the case, you're going to identify it by simply asking the question of what would it take in order for me to actually feel like a success here? And if I don't have a clear and immediate answer, then I know that there's work to do. And if there's work to do, I'm going to go through the process that was described. First, writing out a vision exercise. Second, writing down reasons that are deeply motivating. Third, writing out the goals that I have, what I would actually need to do, all the different things I could do that would help me become this person that I want to be. And then choosing from those, what are the really core essential ones, and putting them on my calendar and making time and prioritizing that time. And once it's on my calendar, now I know it's going to happen. So there's a lot of power in this pattern. There's a lot of power in this exercise, but what it does is a few things. One, it takes you back to a state of feeling like I can do something about this. Two, it creates a sense of clarity of knowing where you actually need to go to get the emotional result or the outcome you want. And so when you know that you have a plan, you also now get to feel successful all along the way as you do the things that are taking you towards the person you want to be. And one of the biggest shifts in how I've thought about goals in the last year or two has been shifting away from putting my hopes and dreams in whether or not I accomplished a goal. That's what's going to make me feel like a success. And moving that to whether or not I become the person for whom that goal inevitably will come to pass. So instead of saying, I'll only feel like a good dad if my kids tell me that they love me 10 times a day or some crap like that, I'm going to feel like a good dad if I do all of the things that allow me to become the type of person that I see as a good dad. And the natural consequence of that is it will be inevitable that my kids will tell me that they love me, or my kids will feel that closeness I want to feel, and that I'll have this relationship I want to have. It will be inevitable for the person who has the habits and prioritizes the time to do all of these things that it takes to be a good dad. So whether it's in your personal life, like it was for me, whether it's in a certain part of your career, whether it's in your financial life and your personal finances, whatever part of your life you're feeling stuck in, or you feel like you're behind, you're not succeeding, take the time to go through this exercise. Give yourself a target. It's such a simple concept, but so many of us are punishing ourselves against vague wishes, when if we just take the time to create a clear target, I promise you're going to hit it. Thanks for joining us for today's episode. I hope it was really valuable for you.
Hey, before you go, I have a small request. Our mission is to empower as many people as possible to maximize their potential through the power of leverage. Could you help us in this mission by leaving a review on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube? And if you know just one person who would benefit from today's episode, would you please share it with them? Your support means the world to us, and we are thrilled to have you in the community. Thank you for being a part of our journey and helping us grow. You can find show notes for today's show and past shows at lessonsinleverage.com, which also has links to connect with me personally and connect with our various podcast channels across your favorite social networks. A big thanks to Solve.cloud, who sponsored this episode. They're a group of expert consultants that help SaaS and financial services companies to implement, optimize, and manage Salesforce.com. They can help you with custom integration solutions and are helping customers to implement some of the most important generative AI technologies. You can find them at solved.cloud. That's SOLVD.cloud is the URL. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon.